If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. I could probably end the list right there, but I'm going to continue. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many more. Speaking from personal experience, creating a podcast felt so overwhelming. I didn't know where to start, but using Anchor was a no-brainer. Their website and app is user-friendly. You're able to navigate through it easily. It's pretty cool, guys. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership, and it's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. A one-stop shop. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. On this week's episode of the Indie Center podcast, we sit down with professional voice actor, Mr. Roy Worley. But before we get into that, a word from our sponsors. This episode of the Indie Center podcast is brought to you by Spotify, the place where you can listen to your favorite artists and podcasts for free. Did you hear me? You don't even need a premium membership. Spotify has a huge catalog of podcasts on every topic, including the one you're listening to right now. On Spotify, you can follow your favorite podcast so you never miss an episode. Are you subscribed to me yet? Wink, wink. Premium users can download episodes to listen to offline wherever you are, and that is so convenient. How many times have you found yourself in an airplane or driving down a road with no reception and you just want to escape but can't? You are stuck sitting next to somebody that snores, or you're stuck in a meaningless conversation and you just want to listen to podcasts. Well, now you can, guys. And you can easily share what you're listening to with your friends on Instagram. So if you haven't done so already, be sure to download the Spotify app and search for Indie Center Podcast on Spotify, or browse podcasts in the Your Library tab. Also, make sure to follow me so you never miss an episode. All right. Episode number 20. I think this is 8. I am here with voice actor Roy Worley. He is known for a lot of clients that he's represented as Mobile Rewards, Petco, Pizza Hut, Xerox, Carfax, Firestone. The list goes on and on. If you don't know who he is, more than likely you've heard his voice, and I'm pretty sure I've heard him on my leisure. Roy, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, doing well today, Luis. Thank you.
Thank you for coming on. I wanted to get right into it. So on your website, it says that you were a pastor and a missionary for 35 years before you got into voice acting. So what made the switch for you?
Well, at the time that I decided to go into it, I had taken sort of a leave of absence from full-time ministry. I had a heart attack and was making some changes in that part of my life. Mm-hmm. And did a few things in the meantime. And then about 9 years ago, felt like that, I needed to do something that was a little bit more of a career and would utilize some things, some gifts that God had given me, one of being, a decent voice to listen to. And a lot of friends were saying, hey, why don't you do that thing that you hear guys doing on television and radio and do commercials? And I started investigating it. I didn't even know what it was called. Found out it's called voiceover. And did some investigation and made a few contacts and ultimately got into it. Kind of went into it a little backwards. If somebody, has interest in getting into it, I would tell them to do it a little bit differently. In fact, a lot differently than I did. But the Lord blessed anyway. And for the last 9 years, I've had a growing voiceover business.
Wow. So it seems like you pushed the right buttons. Did you go through any training?
Yeah, that was actually kind of the backwards part. I started trying to get into it and then finally was connected to a gentleman here actually down in Bourbonnais, which is not too far from either one of us. I mean, you and I are only about 30 minutes apart geographically. And his name is Bill DeWeese, and Bill is a very successful voice talent. He's also a coach, demo producer, and things like that. And Bill was instrumental in being used. He was offering an audiobook narrator's workshop down at Olivet Nazarene University, where he had formerly been the director of the radio station down there before he went out on his own career. He was also had an MBA in marketing and things like that. So anyway, I went down. It was at the radio station in the computer lab, and we did this audiobook workshop. And it was my first exposure to anything related to narration, to voiceover. And then through him, I discovered, okay, there's the way to get into it is, first of all, you do need to get training first. Having a decent voice is not the biggest part of voiceover, believe it or not.
Really?
No, it's not. If you listen to a lot of people on commercials, they don't have the stereotypical announcer voice, which I've been accused of having, but it's just my regular voice. I've had it since when my voice changed when I was about 3. And it's, the baritone, all that kind of stuff, which was very typical back in the 60s and 70s and even before that.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times now people want younger sounding guys. They want guys that sound conversational.
Energetic,
and you can be energetic as an old dude too, but you sound like an old dude. So,
Billy Mays was good at that. Billy Mays was excellent. I could
really?
hear his voice all day. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Billy Mays was good. He sure was. What a loss to us all. But anyway, I went from there. I got training from Bill. Bill created my first demo. After that, I got a lot more training from people across the country that are voiceover coaches. And each of them have their own specific areas. One coach I had that was based out of LA, she did commercial training for commercials broadcast. I had training for promo, excuse me, like the guys and the gals that do the thing, coming this Friday on CBS, that's a promo.
Yeah.
And I haven't done any of that yet. It's a little harder to break into. But I'm currently getting some coaching from a very successful voice talent and audiobook narrator named Sean Pratt. Sean has narrated over 1,000 audiobooks in his career.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he's very prolific. He's got it down to a science, and man, he is a fantastic coach. All of that to say, if you're going to go into this business, you really need to go to school first. And because of the internet making the world smaller, your coach could be in Timbuktu, and you could get internet training or training by Skype, which is what I do, or even by telephone, which I've done. And so that's the first step. Then you need to get a professional website done and investigate other working professional voice talent and take a look at their websites and their brand and how they brand themselves and what your niche is and all that kind of thing. And then a talent agent doesn't hurt, but 99% of my work comes through marketing myself to video production companies and things like that. So that's
wow.
Yeah.
So you said your first shot at it was doing e-learning book, ebook, right? With Bill?
No, Bill put me on the path to it. But Bill put me onto a website called acx.com. It's owned and operated by Amazon. And it stands for Audiobook Creation Exchange, where narrators like myself and usually self-published authors or small publishers go to that place and they post their books and they give a little synopsis of it and they ask for auditions. And so I auditioned for the first time. You can set up a profile and account for free. And I auditioned for about 10 books. And my first book, the guy wrote back, he's a wonderful author named Leland Kirk, based out of Colorado, lives alone, has some wonderful pets, and he wrote this book called 7 Dogs in Heaven. And when he sent me the email, he said, "Your voice is perfect. You are the voice for my book." And when I read that, I literally wept because I had no idea if anybody was going to take me seriously in this business. And I was very privileged to do this book. I recommend anybody that's a dog lover to check it out. 7 Dogs in Heaven by Leland Kirk on audible.com. And each chapter had a distinct dog. All the dogs talked. And
So each of them had a different personality?
that's right. And I got I discovered that I get to do different voices by doing this book. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
So how was that experience for you? First shot at it and,
Yeah.
Handling all these different personalities. How was that for you?
It was really very gratifying. I guess maybe there's a canine side to me because I found it not difficult to do dog voices. And it was really cool because basically the character in the book kind of represented the author a little bit and his experience through life. And the premise of it is that he passes and goes to heaven, and there he meets every dog that had ever been in his life, and they talk to him about why they were assigned to him, which is a different twist. And so one of them was a female Japanese dog. I can't remember the breed, and so I got to do that. And one was a female voiced, English setter, and then another one was a German Shepherd. And there was actually a serpent in a trial scene who was the prosecutor. Accusing this man of something in the book, and I got to do, evil, nasty serpent voice. So that was kind of cool. A lot of fun.
All right. So with your voice being your instrument, right? You're saying how you have all these different teachers that are showing you different things in the different fields.
Yeah.
What were the tricks and methods that kind of surprised you or took you back?
Oh, wow. There's so many. Learning how to interpret copy. It's not as much of a guessing game. There are some tips and things that are common practice within the trade. For instance, usually in some commercial copy, you'll have a list of 3 things. For instance, the new car is fast, luxurious, and your wife will love it. So those are 3 things. And so the coach taught me, the one coach I had, in that first one, you let your voice go down at the end. Then the second one goes up. And then that third thing in the list, you just level out somewhere in between. And it's much more pleasing to hear. And so that's just one of the many things. Some people call them a 1, 2, 3 or an ABC or a list, a laundry list, or, in the industry.
It sounds like a different world.
It is.
You touched on how you got into these different characters and actually played a serpent. Beyond that, have you gotten into character voices before? After that?
Yes, I was privileged to do another book. It was written by a Christian author by the name of what is Bill's last name? Man, when you get to my age, names just fly away. But the name of the book is called Asulan, Sword of Fire, and it's high fantasy is the genre, which means that it is a fantasy novel, but it is with a Christian flavor to it, and it takes place 2,000 years in the future after the humanity has destroyed itself. And what's left of humanity is living on the ruins of the great cities, but with horses and swords as if it were, back in the days of knights and so on. And because Bill is a master of a certain Filipino style of martial arts, which uses a lot of knives and swords, there's a lot of that really well played out in the book. And in that book, he was very specific. I spoke to him many times on the phone. For instance, one character had to have an Irish accent, but it had to be a Northern Irish accent. So I had to do a lot of research. There was a family of 5 brothers, all giants. And the main one had to have a German. They all had different accents, one French, one German, one Italian for some reason. That was just the way he wrote them. And the one that spoke the most was Gath. And I had to do an Arnold Schwarzenegger-like sound. And we got to play. A friend of mine helped me do some sound effects. So it had this really giant effect, I am Gath. My brothers and I are here to help you, that kind of thing. And yet it had a lot of reverb and stuff in it. It was a lot of fun to do. And
so with those characters, do you have to create a backstory for them in order for you to understand how they sound and how they are?
I was so green. The answer is yes, you should. But I was so green and I have no actor's training that at the time, I just kind of put my imagination to use and, let it rip. I could do a lot better job now knowing what I know, and what you're talking about is exactly right. A backstory or a point of view, POV.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where coaching comes in. A good coach will help you to learn the importance of having a point of view before you even start reading the copy or the book in this case.
That's good. So is there any chance that we get to hear you in a series coming soon?
Oh my goodness, yeah. I've got a number of books up on audible.com right now. I've narrated about 50 to 60, maybe 70 books. I've lost count. The most recent one I did was written by Peter Zeihan, Zeihan. He is a geopolitical economist. Fascinating book, nonfiction, about the current world order and economy and where he thinks it's all headed, including the United States potentially withdrawing from NATO. NATO no longer needs to exist because there is no Soviet threat, etc. These are his thoughts. And that's up on Audible right now. It's called Disunited Nations by Peter Zeihan. Yeah.
On audible.com.
On audible.com. And then my favorite genre is doing cowboy novels, Western novels.
You were born in the South, weren't you?
I was born and raised in Memphis, Tennessee. So there's this author who's a fantastic writer. His name is Scott Harris. Scott just retired, sold a very lucrative business in California, and he and his wife are moving over to South Carolina or North Carolina. And he is a prolific writer. I don't know how the guy does it. He just sits down and these things come out, and they're very well written. He's got a series of short novels that end up being about 3 hours in length of listening time in audiobook form, which is not a lot of time at all in an audiobook. So they're shorties, but it's called the Kaz Vigilante series. And I was privileged to narrate all 6 of those. And it's really kind of funny. I mean, it is a cowboy novel, so there's some shooting and people die, but he's the hero with the white hat, and it's if you like cowboy novels, his are good.
Out of those cowboy novels, which character stood out for you the most, like as far as personality?
I like Kaz. He's a no-nonsense guy. He wears some shooting irons on his hip, and he goes after the bad guy, and he usually wins, so to speak. I like him. I also was privileged to narrate 4 Zane Grey novels, also on audible.com. One of them was, and if you've never read Zane Grey, he is like the quintessential, he and Louis L'Amour, in my opinion, are the quintessential authors of Western novels. And they're very distinct in their style, with Zane Grey being more verbose and more descriptive, with a little more eloquence, because he was raised out east, but gets into a lot of good character development. And the one in that 4-book series that I narrated was called The Lone Star Ranger. And at first I thought it was about the Lone Ranger, which it has nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
And it's about the inner conflict of a young man whose father had been a gunfighter, and he apparently has the same kind of personality and bloodlust, so to speak. He doesn't want to, but he does. And the whole book is about him working through that, running from this, that, and the other thing, and then finally coming to some sort of resolution at the end. And I enjoyed reading that.
Have you done any work for a company that you had a loyalty prior?
Not really. Well, I guess Cheetos. Or Cheez-Its, rather. Cheez-Its. Cheez-Its, yeah. I mean, I'm a cracker fan, and last year I did this particular piece. Lives on the internet. It's called Cheez-It Duos, where they combine Cheez-It crackers with pretzels, and got to tap into that.
Do you get a certain satisfying feeling once you land like a job like Cheez-Its? Compared to any other any other company?
I mean, anytime you're privileged to be the voice of a major brand, yeah, there's some satisfaction in that. But in the business, while that looks good on the resume, what we shoot for is repeat customers. A lot of what I do, I've done a lot of what's called e-learning. Maybe some of your listeners would know it as computer-based training, where a company would require them to sit in front of a computer and learn something about the company or dress codes or orientation as a new employee or things like that. I've done quite a bit of that. Actually did one for Petco, training their new employees on how to make the rounds and do a wellness check on the animals, and what to do if one is sick. And, if you see a sick fish or a sick hamster or a sick lizard, how to recognize it, what to do for it, that kind of thing. So that was really fascinating.
So nice segue. Doing e-learning introduces you to different cultures in your client's field. What was the most interesting e-learning that taught you something?
Well, some of them I can't tell you because there's a non-disclosure disclosure agreement. But one that I did do that fascinated me and really gave me a great appreciation for the people in this field was PMP, which I think stands for, oh goodness, again, the name slips me. Some sort of protocol for management protocol.
Project
management protocol.
Project management.
Project management. And this is an internationally accepted standard. And I did a very long training course on that, and the complexities of it, and all of the moving pieces that go into managing a huge project, which is why they come up with this. See, for instance, if a company from the United States was hired to go over to the Philippines and build a factory of some kind, or Spain or anywhere, then the engineers on that side that have been trained in PMP and the engineers on the American side trained in PMP, when they got together, they could set up a system of workers and everybody would know what their job is. And therefore it becomes more efficient. So it was fascinating. I came away thinking, how in the world does anybody remember all of this? It's very complex.
So with approaching e-learning, approaching audiobooks, each field is a different approach. How do you approach e-learning? Do you have to be well-versed in the policy and what you're speaking of?
Well,
or do you just read it off the
you
paper?
have to read it first, especially if there's a lot of technical jargon. Particularly anything in the pharmaceutical or medical field, because of the names. You've got to be able to sound like you're familiar with the name. And fortunately, the internet makes that a little easier for us, because we can go to places on the internet and hear people pronounce those pharmaceutical and medical names. But you need to sound like you're teaching from experience when you're teaching some things, or all of them, really. And sometimes the people will want you to be authoritative in your approach. Some will want you to be articulate and educational in your approach. Some will say, we just want you to be conversational, like one friend talking to another about how to do something. And there was this one company I did something, some work for, and it was an electronics company that created routers for high-rise buildings, and how to install them and so on and so forth. So in that one, they wanted me to talk like I'm talking to you about how to put wire A to post B, etc.
Okay. So I have a lot of actor friends, right?
Okay.
And some of them actually do voiceover for a living.
Yeah.
I know you have you done acting before?
No, I'm not.
Or just voiceover?
I don't do any on camera for a couple of reasons. One, I don't have a face for camera. I would break the camera instantly. No, all kidding aside, I am not trained in that kind of acting. It's kind of a regret. I wish that I had done some acting as a younger man. I'm 63 now, so it's never too late, except for one thing. I not only do this, I'm a part-time pastor in South Chicago Heights, Illinois, and loving it. That's another story for another time. But there are just so many hours in the day, right? And so I don't do on camera, no. But I know a lot of people.
Yeah, you don't want to juggle more than you could do,
right?
So a lot of my actor friends that are voiceovers as well, they're saying that voiceover is completely brutal as far as the audition process and how cutthroat it is. Do you feel the brutality between your competition?
No, I don't.
Or your coworkers?
A very wise man by the name of Bob Sauer. Bob is really big in the voiceover world in terms of narration of audiobooks and e-learning and documentary narrations. He's narrated a documentary about the life of Billy Graham and some other things like that. I met Bob. I sat in a small workshop with Bob in person, listening to his wisdom. And he said, there is no competition in voiceover because you are unique. Nobody is you. Nobody has your voice. The challenge is to find your niche. Now, if you that's related to marketing oneself. Now, if you go to, like, I have an agency, a wonderful group of people, a couple of ladies that own and operate Big Mouth Talent Agency in Chicago. They're my main agent. And I've booked a number of things across the years through them. I've done work through them for Firestone and Sears and companies like that. But what it boils down to is this. It's not competition between voice actor and voice actor. What it boils down to is the guy that wrote the copy has a certain kind of voice in her or his head, and the voice actor who gets closest to that voice is usually who gets chosen.
That's a good takeaway.
Yeah, you've got to know how to read the copy, or you won't be considered. You've got to know where to put. You got to put as my dad used to say, you got to put the emphasis on the right syllable, or the emphasis on the right syllable, and be able to know what words need a little more love than others in the copy and things like that. In other words, you got to know what you're doing with the copy, and that's where the training comes in. But, it's subjective to some extent. Let's say you got 2 actors or 5 actors, voice actors, all male, and they're all female. They're all auditioning for the same spot. Maybe, somebody hears my voice and says, "Oh, I like that guy. He sounds like my favorite uncle." And the next guy listens to my voice, says, "I can't stand that guy's voice. He sounds like an old uncle I used to have." It's all subjective.
Yeah.
And it really boils down to who gets closest to the voice in that person's head and how you handle copy. And you've got to be trained. You've got to be professional, or you won't even make it to the final cut to be heard.
Oh, that's a really good way to think of it, man. I always thought of it as like me against the world, me against, the next person.
You know what it is?
That's a really good way. What's up?
In voice acting, it's you against you. Here's what I mean by that. Voice acting is a business, and most of us in the business are creatives. And what I discovered, the biggest challenge that I have is doing the business end of it, like marketing myself. And, I just learned this week from my coach, Sean Pratt, about how to do a better job of marketing myself to get more bookings for audiobooks. And I'm really excited about it. It's going to be on social media. It's going to be a lot of fun just to do that, because I am a creative. I love the creative aspect of that. And then the discipline is where it comes in, because he says, "Okay, Roy, I want you to market yourself on social media 2 times a week, 3 if you can, but I'll take 2. That's where the discipline comes in. And the people that are very successful in voiceover are people who are not only talented, but are disciplined at the business aspect of it.
So you keep mentioning audiobook, right?
Yeah.
Out of all the fields that you've been in, right? Commercial, promo, e-learning, radio, audiobooks, which one do you enjoy most?
Well, I enjoy audiobooks because I like a good story. Now, I've deliberately tried to get into more nonfiction audiobooks because I feel like that's something I can do well at. And at the end of the day, it's about paying your bills. Yeah. And it's funny how they keep wanting us to pay those on a regular basis. It's kind of crazy, but that's the way life is. And so, but in audiobooks, when you're first starting out through something like acx.com, that's where you're building your chops. That's where you're defining yourself, and where you're finding your niche, where you fit. And for me, I can do nonfiction. I can do a lot of different genres. I've done lots of children's books. The last one I did, which is a mixed mutt with a strong beagle influence in his life, is narrating the entire book, and his name is Oliver, and he's an adopted dog, and he's got anxiety and depression, and it's written, I think, to help kids that have the same things to know how to deal with stuff, and it's screaming funny, and I enjoyed doing that book. So telling a story for me is the greatest enjoyment. Now, that said, getting to go into downtown Chicago to CRC Studios or ARU Studios on Michigan Avenue, That's a lot of fun, and mainly it just gets me out of my cage here in my studio at home and creates some sanity. But you meet a lot of people in that regard, and so they're different. I come at it from different perspectives. It's fun to do commercials. It's fun to do audiobooks. There's more money in commercials, obviously. So
Oh yeah.
we'd love to book more of those. Recently, I've gotten a client that creates health supplements. One is called Nopalea. It's a shameless commercial here on my part, but I voiced a number of their commercials.
Go ahead, plug it up.
Yeah, it's made out of cactus juice, man. Seriously, the Nepal cactus.
Oh, cactus juice, really?
Yeah, it's supposed to be really good
different.
for you. Nopalea, and then Vital C. I just did one last week, which is airing out in the Phoenix market this week.
Okay.
All these things are good for you. You know, they've been around for a long time. So, and they keep coming back to me. That's where, like I said, you want to create relationships in business. It's not just a job. It's about relationships, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
So with actors, right, with the quarantine lockdown, we can't get out of here. With actors posting self-audition tapes, monologues, and trying to collaborate with other creatives during the lockdown, how are you staying active artistically?
Well, I'm really excited about this downtime. It's a little bit downtime. I have work coming in, but it's slowed down to a trickle. And so, in the rest of the time, I'm taking advantage of this time to get some training with Sean Pratt in the area of narration. And Sean's specialty is nonfiction narration. So once I graduate from his class, I don't know, in a few months, because we meet monthly. And Sean is just really good. He gives us, his students, homework. But the homework is stuff that you do that end up being marketing tools and business tools when you're done. So from that point of view, this coming week, I'm going to be focusing on the things that he just gave me to do, which one I've already mentioned, and some other things, like recreating some fresh demos to put up on acx.com. You can go there and find me as Roy Worley and listen to 5 demos I just posted of different kinds of books. And that's, for rights holders and authors who are looking for the right voice can find me. I've done one or two business books, but yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, if I had your voice, right? I mean, you have such a soothing voice. If I had your voice and I was on lockdown, I'd be narrating everything that I'm doing.
Yeah.
I'm getting bread, putting it in the toaster. I'm putting butter on it. That's the way I stay actively artistic.
Well,
artistically.
It's funny. We as voice actors actually do that. We part of our professional development is listening to our peers do commercials on television or radio. And when we hear how a person turns a phrase or somebody in my voice range doing something, I actually try to mimic them, like the Arby's commercials that Ving Rhames does. We have the beef. I don't sound like him, never will. But and man, he's just got one of those enviable voices. But he's also a great actor. But we do that. My wife sometimes will be in the office next to our living room where the television is, and she'll hear me saying something. She says, "What?" And I said, "I'm just practicing. I'm just repeating what I hear and see if I could do it."
Oh, that's funny. So you're saying that you like kind of copy, right, Vin Rhames? Do you do impressions? Have you ever tried that?
It's interesting. Yes, and I'm not really all that good at it, but my very first voiceover gig was for a corporate internal video imitating John Wayne. And I booked it. And
you booked it?
I booked it. Yeah, it was screaming funny. So it was something like John Wayne is the boss, and he's talking to this female employee, and he says, "Well, little sister, we had a job of work for you to do, and you didn't get it done, did you?" So that's really a terrible impersonation, but they hired me, man. It's like one coach told me, he said, "Man, take the money."
It works. Just go ahead, run with it. Just go.
Well, and then, so many people make an attempt to do Sir Sean Connery, and he has such a distinctive voice. And in that book I mentioned, Ascalon Sword of Fire, which is really a book geared toward young men. from ages 17 and up, but it would go even younger in this age of video games and all the fighting and everything. But the king is one of the main characters, and he wanted him to sound a little bit like Sean Connery, so I did that as the king, and that's about it, man.
All right. So this whole COVID thing sounds like something straight out of a movie, and everybody's comparing it to Contagion, Outbreak, and all these other movies. How would you deliver this as a movie trailer? I'm gonna give you the floor with this one.
Let me think. Okay. Oh, something it would be like in a land where toilet paper is scarce, corn cobs are making a comeback. I hear you laughing.
I'm pulling away from the mic because I'm not trying to break it. That is funny.
Hey, you got to laugh, man. I mean, it's serious.
Yeah.
This is deadly serious, and I'm not making.
It's unfortunate, but I mean, we have to make light of something.
Listen, man. I grew up in a family of monkeys, and the way in the poor sections of Memphis, Tennessee, and the way we got through life is we laughed a lot.
That's the best way. I mean, you can't really be down the whole time. You have to see light in somewhere.
You do.
So any word of advice to aspiring storytellers or voiceover actors?
Yeah, there's a lot of great resources out there. One of them is a platform based out of Los Angeles that will help you with your voiceover careers called Global Voice Acting Academy. And it's run by voice talent David Rosenthal, who lives out there. I think he's in LA now. And then Christina Malicia. Christina does a lot of cartoon voices. She's a voice in many, many animated movies and things. And congratulations to her. She and her husband just became new parents.
Oh, wow. Congratulations.
Yeah. And so if you go there, it's online. It's not a brick and mortar at all. It's Global Voice Acting Academy, GVAA. And they have a bevy of working voice talent who are also coaches. And I did my promo demo by getting coaching through Joyce Castellanos, who's one of the coaches. Joyce used to do a lot of coach. I don't know if you've ever heard of the famous Don LaFontaine. Before he passed, he was the guy that did In a World, all those classic.
Okay, yeah.
Don LaFontaine, she used to direct him back in the days before the internet and when people actually came into a studio to do the recordings. And basically, you didn't direct Don, she said. You just said, okay, Don, that's great. Now, can you give it to me in a higher pitch or, so on and so forth, because he read the copy flawlessly. But,
Wow.
And you'll find a lot of people on that site who can help you. Plus, one of the things, the challenges for voice talent who are just getting in the business is how much do you charge for your services? And there's a lot of coaching out there, a lot of wisdom that says, there should be a standard rate, and you need to know your value. And never tell anybody you're brand new. If you've done all the training, you're ready to go, and you're ready to rock and roll, be a professional and just do it. I wouldn't tell somebody I'm a beginning mechanic. If I opened a shop, I'd just do a good job and they'd come back. And so they're one of the places there. If anybody is already in voice or has just gotten into voice acting, and they'd like some recommendations for coaches, they can contact me through my email, which is on my webpage.
All right. What's your webpage? How could they get in contact with you? It
is royworleyvo.com.
That sounded just like a commercial. I was just waiting for music or something. What's up next for you, Roy?
I'm hoping that one of my biggest clients is a hospital chain out of Indiana. I've done all of their on-hold messaging. Just scores and scores of, thank you for calling the hospital and blah, blah, blah. Recently, because of COVID, they were unable to have live orientation because of COVID-19. And so they contacted me, a guy that I've not worked with, because this is a big, huge network. And he said, I heard you've done some computer-based training for us before. We can't do our orientation. It's 276 slide PowerPoint. We're going to put it in computer-based training. are you available like right now to do it? And I said, yeah. And then a couple of weeks later, a colleague of his called and she said, hey, my buddy said you did work for us and he liked your work. And we've got 5 more different modules for training employees. Can you do those? So and they did say they would, reach back out and there's more work coming down the pike. So that's always good when you've got a client like that.
Oh, that's great.
My dream, everybody's dream is to book a national ad. I got close a couple of times. It went to the other guy. That is, I told my agent on the second one, I said, look, you need to find out who that other guy is and take him out. Just take him out.
Give him a sore throat or something.
Yeah,
you have to put something in his teeth.
Whatever it takes. But that's the way it is. Again, it goes back to the client making the final choice based on the voice they had in their head. But I'd like to book a national ad, and I audition for them all the time. And it's just, I get close. I've had some callbacks, just haven't been chosen yet.
One day you'll get that golden ticket, though. One day it's going to come.
Yeah, and another thing that I'm shooting for is to get into documentary narration. I'd love to do work for Discovery Channel and National Geographic Channel.
I could actually hear you in National Geographic. I really could.
I appreciate that. I've done some small jobs for documentaries. In fact, I was contacted by the people at the Shenandoah National Park over in Virginia, and I narrated 5 documentary videos that live on their website that educate people about the origin and how the national park came about. So that was a lot of fun.
Good. So I hope you book these documentaries. Did you have a certain road of documentary that you want to tackle? Did you want to tackle like history, or what documentary would you like?
History, nature, current events, those kinds of things. Any of those would be good.
Nice. So do you have any special shout outs?
Well, yeah, to my wife. I love her. So, I mean, no, nothing comes to mind right now. I mean, just a general shout out to all the people right now who are essential workers. My daughter, oldest daughter, I have 3 grown daughters, actually works at Walmart, and they're staying open. It's actually not too far from you. It's the one in Lockport, Illinois, and she's customer service, and of course, you've got a lot of people coming in and out, and it's kind of dangerous out there right now. So to all the essential workers, doctors, nurses, first responders, you name it, that's my shout out.
Thank you guys for being first responders, being out there on the front lines, taking care of us. We really appreciate you. That's a great shout out. Roy, I had fun entering your world. I thank you for jumping on my podcast. I really appreciate it. Thank you for your time, buddy.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to continue hearing you around the world. So keep doing your thing, and I hope to see you around. Okay.
All right, Luis. Thanks.
All right. Take care.
God bless.
Bye.
If you enjoyed this week's episode, please make sure you hit that subscribe button to stay centered on all Indie Center podcast episodes. If you are an independent creator and have a story to share and want to have a sit down, please email me at indiecenter.podcast@gmail.com. That's indiecenter.podcast@gmail.com. If you have sponsorship inquiries, I'd love to help local businesses. Please email me at indiecenter.podcast@gmail.com. Until next Monday, guys. Peace.